Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Elizabeth, your favorite channel. Let's go ahead and take a look at the angel number 333. Now, I'm saying it slowly because I'm getting a message right away that when we're looking at 333, this is attuning to your divine self. That's what I'm hearing. Attuning to your divine self. So if you are a twin flame and you are seeing that number a lot, or you identify as being an awakened feminine, then this video is going to be for you, because it is going to tap into what those messages mean on a collective level. Of course, it's always good to check in with yourself to see what the messages might mean in a more direct way to you, or to obtain a new layer of guidance that wants to come through between you and your spirit team of light. All right, let's go ahead and look at 333. We're talking about attuning to your divine self. I'm hearing several things. Let me hold for one moment. So let's talk about what's in the tarot, for example. 3 is the Empress. Is it? Yeah. And so when we think about attuning to your divine self, it's about finding the frequency that is your divine self and making sure you are tuning yourself and your frequency to match that. So, have you been living from the place of your divinity? So when we think about the Empress card, she is the ultimate feminine energy, right? Because all the queens in the tarot combine to make the Empress. And so when you think about the Empress, don't just think, oh, you're a mother or a mother figure. And don't just think about birthing a physical person into the earth realm, but begin to think about her as the ultimate feminine energy, the divine feminine energy, and to recognize that that divine energy has a signature purpose in this world. And so when you think about yourself from your divinity and your divine feminine energy, what is your signature purpose in this world? What are you birthing in this world? Who are you mothering in this world? Who are you nurturing? What are you nurturing in this world? And maybe you are looking through the lens of a mother or motherhood at this time, and you're beginning to say, well, am I showing up as my divine self in how I nurture my children, in how I engage with my children or my family? And maybe you can also think about the relationships that you're in, and you can begin to say, well, how do I tune or attune my frequency to match the ultimate feminine energy, divine feminine energy? But then first of all, you'd have to define that for yourself. And all of us, or each of us, will express our divinity in different ways, because in your expression of your divinity, you may find that you are more modest. In another person's expression of their divinity, you may find that they're more eccentric. So the truth is, as you listen to this message and as you ponder it, think about what would be the full expression of your divinity in terms of what is the full expression of yourself, your true, authentic self. If you weren't worried about being judged, if there was nothing to hold you back, if everything was available to you, who would you give yourself permission to be? Start there. Because that's what I'm hearing. When we think of the number 3, and I feel like I'm being directed in so many different directions. But when I think of the number three, I think of angelic or divine assistance. And so maybe as you think about the Empress, you are considering the ways you've struggled to show up in your fullness, the ways you've been stripped of your personal power, the relationships that made you feel small, whether they were romantic or whether they were with your parents or with friends in your life, co-workers, whatever. It's like, where did you have this challenge and where are you still experiencing that challenge now? Maybe you're thinking about the difficulty you've had giving birth to a child. Or maybe you're thinking about the challenges that you've had as it relates to birthing a project or a business in the world. So when you're thinking, well, how can I attune to this divine energy, to this divine self when I'm struggling with these areas that are connected to who I am at my core? And so, it's interesting because to attune to yourself is to understand, first of all, that there is a healed expression of yourself that already exists. So, this is not going somewhere on some other planet to go find this person or this expression. It's already knowing, it's starting from knowing that what you want to accomplish through healing or through realignment or through revision of your goals, that all of those already exist. And it's simply about attuning yourself through whatever standards and practices and whatever it is that you need to do to align again with the divine frequency. It's like if I'm listening to the radio and it's on a station that I don't want, or you know how sometimes you're listening to something and you're like, well, wait, I can't hear it properly. It's like it's on two stations at one time. And so you begin to move the dial because that's the action that you're taking. So you're moving the dial to make sure that you are finding the right channel. And sometimes you have to come off that station that you're on completely because the clean version of that station, the one that you can hear clearly, is found on another set of numbers or another station altogether. I don't know if that's ever happened to you where the stations are crossed, but I want to create a distinction here with tuning in and attuning. So we tune in often, right? Because we get to hear what the divine says for our lives. We get to hear the divine message for us. And now to attune to it. So I'd love to say that this is a two-step process. To attune to the divine energy is to cause your frequency to match that of the divine. So when you are attuned into your divine self, you are causing the frequency that you're giving off to match that of the divine expression of yourself. I felt like I needed to explore that a bit. So we talked about the Empress. I would say in the deck we also have the Three of Swords. And so you may be thinking about challenges that you're having around processing grief and loss, and how being in that state of sorrow and deep sadness, how that have kept you from being in your divinity and expressing your full authentic self in the world. And so where are you still holding on to pain? Isn't it true that there are times when we can become so familiar with the pain and the shame that we're not even sure what our lives would be without it? Like, if I was no longer complaining about this knee pain, then what else would I be doing? What else would I be complaining about? And is it okay to not complain? And let's be honest, it's like some people, and we can become addicted to chaos. We can become addicted to grief. We can become addicted to suffering. And so I feel like, as the divine says to us, to attune our frequency to the divine self, that there is this sense that we must say, well, who am I in my divinity? How do I process pain in my divinity? And when I think about the consciousness that's divine, then it's not burdened by anything. It's not impacted by joy or sorrow, right? Because it is this observer that we have that is watching us as we live out these roles and have these experiences. So in your divinity, as your divine self, will you get trapped in a cycle of pain? And so I feel like we're all being confronted with this, because we're all having to ask ourselves, where have I been embracing and completely embodying a lower aspect of myself, a lower expression of myself, because I'm afraid to face the pain head on, because I'm afraid to acknowledge that I messed up or that I was hurt, because I'm afraid to take responsibility for the suffering that I'm going through at this time. And can we be real? All of us can think of things that we are still carrying around with us that may have happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 5 years ago, last year, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. And it's not that we'll never have to deal with pain, but how do we move through it? Are we moving through it as victims, or are we moving through it as victors? And let me say this, it's a process. It's a process of recognizing that we can be free. And so that might include owning what we've been through and not being ashamed of that. Whether we had something done to us or we were the ones who did something to others. And then being willing to do differently. So was there a reason I was in this particular situation? If there was, and I can do something different, then it's my cue to do something different, to think in a different way, to express myself differently. And this is not about losing yourself. This is about asking yourself, what would have been a better step for me, and taking that step. But I'm also feeling like to be in our divinities, to not get stuck. And so there's nothing wrong with the process of healing and the process of working through grief and loss and the process of feeling through the pain. But where we trip ourselves up is when we get stuck. Okay? So let's move on to the next 3-number card in the deck, and that's the 3 of Wands. And when you think about the 3 of Wands, what comes to mind as you attune yourself to the divine frequency or to your divine self? The 3 of Wands is about waiting for your ships to come in. And whew, we know that waiting isn't easy. See, I feel like this 333 message is really calling us higher. It's like, yeah, how you've been doing it, you can do it better. And so why not? Why not? And it doesn't mean that you cannot and shouldn't accept yourself fully where you are with what you have, baggage and all. Yes, we still have to embrace ourselves completely. But having done so, it's time for us to look with, I'm hearing, truthful eyes, honest eyes, at what is serving us versus what is hampering us. And so when we think about how we are waiting on the divine, I'm hearing, are you waiting constantly for a miracle, or are you taking action? Because it's in taking action that you find your divinity. And when I say waiting, it is this abandonment of your sovereignty, this abandonment of your ability to take action. Now, sometimes the action that we take is to do no thing, but that's still a decision that we're making. So it's like, do not abandon your ability to make a decision and to take action, because it's like I'm feeling like some people, they're in this state where they want to do something, but they're not giving themselves permission to do it. And do you see how that's different? It's different because you are craving something, but you're not allowing yourself to explore that which you're craving. And because of that, you wouldn't be in your divine self. I hope I explained that well. So we're being asked to look at the posture that we're living our lives from. Are we living from a lower expression of ourselves, or are we always desiring to up level to a more expanded expression of ourselves in the world? You know, it's interesting, when I was growing up, we would always be told in church, like, uh, when you're waiting for something, like, don't grumble, don't complain. And for some reason, I'm being drawn to that message again, because I feel like many times, if we're not careful, we'll begin to feel like this waiting period is life happening to us versus life happening for us. And I feel like the divine is saying it's time to attune to your divine self, to recognize that life is what you make of it, and that you are a co-creator with the divine. So do not abandon your power. Do not abandon yourself in the process. In the process of waiting for life to unfold, in the process of going about your daily life, you are not just a game piece, is what I'm hearing, okay? You know, we talk a lot about being in this game and being in the matrix, but it's like, can you free yourself from all the programming and antiquated ideas that may have served another generation, but that isn't serving you, so that you're not keeping yourself on pause in that posture of standing still when movement is needed. When movement is needed. That's how I'm being guided to explain the Three of Wands as it relates to attuning to the divine frequency. I'm also feeling like attuning to your divine self is what will let you know what season of life you're in. Because are you waiting out of season? Are you acting out of season? And maybe you've had that experience in your life because you had an idea and you kind of sat on it, and then by the time you mustered up enough courage, it felt like it missed the boat, like it missed its time, and then you're finding that you're being redirected to something else, or you begin to see all these people popping up and they have kind of a version of what it is you had been inspired to do, but that you had chosen to not take action on. And so I feel like the divine is saying, here's how you attune to your divine self. Here's how you match your divine self, by being so connected and in tune with source that you never skip a beat and you never work out of the season for your life. Okay, the Three of Cups is next. I feel like the Three of Cups is about playing. I feel it in two ways. So it's about giving yourself permission to enjoy life. I don't know about you, but I know how I was raised. There was so much discipline that was required of me that for most of my life, I didn't know what it was like to just let go and have fun. Like, I would see people do that, and immediately I would begin to say, like, that's reckless. It's almost like there was a part of me that began judging them immediately because I'm like, who gave you permission to have all this fun when I had to be so reserved and so disciplined and so like not allowed to venture out of a particular mold, right? I remember growing up when it would be summertime and all the kids are getting ready to charge outside and to have an amazing summer. And my summer could not begin until after I had read all the books that my father had bought for school that would be used in the upcoming school year. And so there was always this deferral of fun. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because we go back to knowing when something is in season and when something is out of season. And there is a time when it's focus that's required, right? But there is also a time when play is required. And often we're being taught how to kind of marry the two so that we're not being too stuck up and stiff in our lives, and then that we're not being too reckless in our lives as well. It's like finding that balance, and that's how I'm feeling. If you've been finding yourself on one end of the spectrum where you're way too stiff and structured, or you're way too like all over the place and playful, especially when it's time to be focused and serious, it's like the divine is like, in order to attune to the divine self, you need to understand what your life requires in the now moment. And can we be honest? Sometimes when we're really, really stressed out, the divine is like, can you go play? Can you go run around outside? Can you go on vacation? Can you go for a walk? Can you go listen to the birds chirping? And you're like, but God, do you see all these deadlines over here? But God knows, or the divine knows what you need in the moment, and it may not make sense. So that's why I'm saying it's so important to be in tune and attuned to the divine self or the divine frequency for our lives. But when we think about the Three of Cups, I also think about partnerships and friendships, relationships, right? And we have to begin to ask ourselves, in order to attune ourselves, whether as twin flames or just as awakened feminines or masculines, all of us, whether or not those we are connected to, whether they are serving us, and what do they say about us. Now, this is interesting. I've heard this growing up. Show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. Because the old people back then would always say, you are a part of who you keep company with. Something like that. So it was always so important for you to choose your friends wisely and to choose the communities that you are connected to wisely and to choose the content that you would allow yourself to consume wisely. Like, all of that was important. And so here, as you attune to the divine frequency, it's about asking the divine, who should I be communing with? Who should I allow myself to be at ease with and to celebrate with? Like, who should I allow to come into my space? Are these people okay? Are they qualified? Are they approved by you? When was the last time? Before starting a relationship, before, giving all your time and attention to a friendship, when was the last time, even a community that you're a part of, maybe it's other twin flames that you are connected to, when was the last time before you committed to anything that you said to the divine, is this approved? And I'm feeling like that's what we're being guided to do. It's like the divine is like, why are you making decisions without checking in with whether or not it serves you? Without checking into the highest expression of yourself to say, hey, is this a go for me? Because the higher expression of you has a perspective and a view that the lower expression of you doesn't. The higher consciousness of you, your higher consciousness, sees things in a way that you might not. And it doesn't mean that all the people you commune with are going to be amazing, because there are some who are there as lessons for you. And so you could have challenging connections. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It just talks about the role that they're meant to play. So the more you allow yourself to move and to connect with people based on what has the divine stamp of approval, is the more intentional you're living your life, and the more you are able to call into your experience the people, the relationships, the connections, the communities, the content that serves you. So did I miss any cards? So the Empress, the Three of Swords, the Three of Wands, the Three of Cups, and the Three of Pentacles. The Three of Pentacles, tuning to the divine blueprint and expression for your life. That's interesting, because I hadn't been saying that all along, and now I am. And so I feel like this is asking us what we're building in this world. What structures are we erecting in this world, and are they representative of our highest good and the divine self? Because so many times what we're creating is based on what everybody else told us that we should create, or what everybody else says that we're good at. But really, it's just touching like the tip of why we're actually here and who we're called to be and what we should be focused on. So when it comes onto the family structure, because I'm hearing Four of Wands, everything that you are erecting, building in this world, when was the last time you sought approval? You know, just like blueprints, how you have to submit them to the county or to whatever the office is for approval to go ahead and start building. It's like, when was the last time you asked the divine, should I be building? Should I be having children with this person? Should I be going into a business partnership with this person? This business that I'm pouring myself into, is it the right business for me? Is it the right expression of me in the world? Because I feel like, oh, what about my body? I'm hearing, are you being a good steward of your body? Because what is the legacy that you're leaving behind? Many times when we think about legacy, we just think about money. But legacy is about so much more. It's about the perspectives that you're leaving behind. Like, what kind of mindset and what kind of ideas are you leaving behind? But also, are you leaving a legacy of health? Are you not only taking care of yourself, are you teaching others to take care of themselves and to prioritize their health? Because this body is important. And many times when we're on these spiritual journeys, it's almost impossible for us to elevate our consciousness and not take our body with us, right? Because there's this sense that you want to start eating better, you want to maybe start exercising, you want to begin to take care of the vehicle that you have, because the vehicle also has to level up just like your consciousness is leveling up. And so that's what I'm feeling. It's like, is it time to go back to the drawing board in order to attune yourself or attune with your divine self? And if you used those 5 segments that we just talked about, you're going to find that you are able to look at the places or uncover the places that could use some shifting but that you also uncover the places that you are really doing well in and that you are strong in as it relates to your divine self. I hope this message served you, especially as twin flames, because I know many of you are watching this because you're seeing a lot of threes. So there are times when the message is directly related to your twin flame journey, or rather your counterpart. But more often than not, it's about your personal journey. So when you think about the counterpart, if that's when you're seeing 333, then I would say, based on what I'm hearing right now, is attune even more to your divine self, because in doing so, you naturally magnetize to you the divine partner for you. Because if you are in your divinity, then you will attract someone else who is in his or her divinity. And so it works both ways, right? So that's the message that I have for you. Let me know if this message served you, and I will talk to you again in another video. Bye.